Right, it's time to replace the 1100G's battery, the big old lead acid lump over here. This time I wasn't able to get a Deltran battery tender battery. They've stopped selling them at this present moment in time. I was able to get this kinetic battery at a reasonable price. I think it turned out to be $114 delivered. If you're looking at a top quality lead acid, these cheapos go for about $45 delivered, somewhere in that region. February 2015 was the date I've got on that one. It's now September 2018, so it's done fairly well, 3.5 years in Phoenix. But the heat kills them here very rapidly. So hopefully this one's going to last a lot longer. And it's also a damn sight lighter, which is why I brought my scale out. To make this run, the maximum charge voltage on this, I believe, is 14.4 or 5. You can't seem to make their minds up. So I've come up with some devices that I can put in the ground leg, which is why it's got the G on there. So these will go in the ground leg. A couple of diodes. It drops the voltage by roughly half a volt, because I know that my Suzuki puts out 14.7 volts. So this should cut it to about 14.2 in that ballpark, hopefully. And it should work, and it should keep this from being overcharged, which is one of the problems that lithiums have, is you put too much volts in them and they generally can't handle it. Deltran is supposedly coming out with a new version that can handle different voltages, but it's not available at this time when I need the battery. So I've had to go through all this rigmarole and doing it. Okay, so let's just for a quickie test see how much these batteries weigh. This is in ounces down here. We'll put on the kinetic. I've got 26 3/4. Put on the lead acid lump. 166 1/4. I'll do the math on that later. Alright, so one of the things you have to do is, of course, the lead acid battery is just so much bigger than the lithium. You can tell there's a huge height difference just to get these to the same height as the other one. These foam spacers that they supplied, well, they get you part the way there, maybe all the way there, but the battery box is making it a bit challenging. I do have this foam, which is normally used to put on houses. It's 1.5 inches thick, so it can sit on a piece of this, and it's almost there. I've still got to add some height to it to get it back to this level, so I'll probably use some foam spacers to get it back up as well. And I'll show you the battery box challenge. So this is where the battery fits on the bike. You can see it's loose right now because you have to take off the fuel tank support, which is why all the rest of this is wide open. You've got to take the fuel tank off. The problem is there's a strap across the bottom. There's a strap around the top, and that's it. Unlike the Bonneville and the FC09, which both had plastic boxes that you could put this stuff into, and it's fairly easy to put spacers all around. Obviously, putting spacers where there's no support is going to be a bit of a problem. Okay, so to make things a little easier for me, I've actually taken the battery box out. You can see all the holes in it. This is how it fits in the bike. This is battery, same orientation as this one. So I think I've got a spacer and then 2 of these spacers, and it gets me pretty close to the same height. So I think I might go with that for the base. Then I've got to bring in some other spacers to put on the back, and I have to leave enough room so I can get the electrical gubbins in. These things are going to fit something like this, and I'll bring the wires up and around. Here's the other one. The other one's pretty small. It can virtually stand. This one's a little heavier. It's going to need some support, so I may be putting a spacer up here so that it can fit properly and be supported, so the weight isn't on all the wires. So I've got a piece of foam jammed in here, made it 160 millimeters, and it's a tight fit between the steel strap on both sides. I've got the two spaces on the bottom that I figured would make it almost the same height, not quite. This is where it's going to fit in there. Now I have to decide, because I've got to get these in and I want to get them in a secure location, is should I bias it towards one side or the other. But the first thing I'm going to do is measure the gap from here to the steel, because there's actually some steel, there's some space there. So I'm measuring the distance here, and I've got 1.1 on the front and 7/8 on the side. So let me go check the spaces. 1.1 and 7/8. Right, so I've cut up one of the smaller squares into 4 pieces. I've given the insides a wipe off with brake cleaner, carb cleaner, just to clean them up a bit so they stick. I'm going to put those in there. Okay, so I think I have the spacer situation sorted. I've got these 2 rectangular ones on the bottom. I've cut up 2 other ones on the side here. I'm probably going to do something different with this ground wire, but we'll see when I get in bike. And I've got 3 thicknesses of spacer here. So when I lift it up and drop it in, so a little, that's a pretty snug fit. And that's how I'm going to stick it in the bike. So these go onto the existing foam here. This piece of foam acts as a bit of a softening blow for that thing. These are okay. I'll stop over here. Yeah, it's touching on the back, touching on that side. And I think that should hold it in place. And of course we've got the big piece of foam on the bottom. Right, I've got the battery tray is in, and I've got the fuel tank support on top of it, holding it all down, because you kind of have to have both of these in. There's the battery. I did cheat and steal an extra support, though this rubber thing isn't doing much. Extra support from L Deltran spacers, just to put a bit of preload on the battery. Otherwise this thing is loose. I did remove this one plug to get this in. I've had to put a washer under it too to get it to seat properly. This is where I want it to be. I'll probably cheat when I do the first cranking, because it's going to take a lot of cranking power to get this thing rolling. So I'll do that first, and that makes it easy to do. That's also my get home method in case any of the diodes fail. Just bring it over, I can unscrew it, screw it right on there. That bypasses them. So I think I'm ready to give it a crank. Right, so I've got the key in. It's obviously not going to start because I don't have the fuel attached, but I just want to see how it cranks. So I'm going to short this across to start with, just to see how it cranks. Alright, that is cranking pretty damn fast. Oh, I'm thinking that cranks faster than the lead acid battery. Okay, so I'm going to assemble it the rest of the way. Actually, I'm going to give it one more crank test now without doing the bypass, just to make sure my diodes are working. If there's a giant spark, look around here, you'll see it. Well, that seems to work. Alright, reassembly time. Alright, got it reassembled on reserve. Let's do some voltage measuring. First of all, I've got to prime it. As you know, I've got a primer button so I can run the fuel pump, which is down this way. That's where you're going to hear it. Okay, so I'm running the primer, which is running the fuel pump. The because the bike's been sitting for 2 months at least, and I need to fill the carbs up with fuel. And this is something I had to add, and here we go. Right, so the carbs are topped up, pretty much. And let's see if we'll start. It might need a little bit of choke. Cleaning a little because of the misfire there, but as you can see, I'm measuring it across from the battery to the ground. So it's charging at 14.5, and if I measure across the battery, I get 13.7. So that's at least more than half a volt drop. Alright, I'm standing on the other side now. This is a direct measurement of volt drop. If I can hold these on. So it's got 0.6. I'll rev it up a bit.